There's the giggle. It's because I'm excited, Pinky. Hi, everybody, and welcome to another episode of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed. And I'm a big believer in that. And something that I think we're going to be talking about today is actually completely different to what we've talked about. Bearing in mind, Pinky, and I'll allow you to introduce yourself in a second. A few episodes ago, we had an exorcist on. So sometimes, but I know I can't wait for people to see that episode. But this is this one, which is not exorcism in any way whatsoever. So today we are talking about a really important part of in the workplace, being able to be yourself and having that ability to be able to communicate. Communication, I think, is costing businesses a lot more than they like to think. Because if the communication is not there, I've worked with some really high up HR managers that still don't like having those critical conversations. And today we're going to talk about it and how to do it. And today's all about conflict resolution, which, like I told you in the 5 minute prep before the podcast, I had a chat with the business yesterday and I was like, do you know what? I'm going to be able to ask all the questions to today's guest. So, as if you were on blind date, Pinky, tell us who you are, where you're from, and what you do.
Okay, here we go. So I am a advisor, mentor, executive coach. I've been doing it for the last 10 years. Um, and conflict resolution is one of the things that I do. I help people to overcome these communication difficulties. I help people with difficult conversations, how to handle those. And I work with not only people, individuals, but I work in teams as well and helping them overcome these things just to make the team more effective, um, better decision making, generally trying to retain your people and helping you save money as well whilst you're doing it. So that's what I do.
Do you know, I think it's the word that stuck out there for me is retain. Because the cost to re-employ, look for new people, is a massive drain on businesses, isn't it?
Huge. Yeah.
I mean, the cost of looking for someone, training somebody up, and then having it's the stress that it puts on the employees as well, that one member's missing. So everybody else has to muddle together because we're a team and we have to go in and we'll make this work. But it's actually quite stressful, isn't it?
Very, very stressful, time consuming, drain of money and revenue, and it's really not necessary. And I think if you go back to how much you spend to train up somebody, to get them into where you're working and to get them to the level that you want them to be, and then something like a conflict or a disagreement or something happens that creates this difficult conversation, but also a difficult environment, and the culture changes, it then impacts everyone. It's not just the person. And therefore, it's costing businesses a lot of money.
I think I read somewhere that if a high up executive, female executive, who didn't feel supported going through the menopause, the actual cost to replace that executive in that with something like 15 to 20 years experience within the business was something in the lines of anywhere between £70,000 to £90,000 a cost to your business by letting that executive go and not actually resolving or supporting or letting that person feel supported through things. And I always say this, my wife's going through the menopause, so I feel like I have a lot of side knowledge, not the actual knowledge, but seeing how that genuinely affects us. And we're not talking about the menopause today. We are talking about that conflict resolution and the cost to the business with things like that. So before we get to the actual conflict resolution, Pinky, the best way we can start the journey is the journey of how did Pinky go from wherever she was to becoming a certified, I'm looking at your background, woman-owned executive, the Mentoring Matters, Net Woman, Tech Women, Barclays. What's the journey for somebody watching this going, I want to do what Pinky does?
So I started off and it's completely off what I'm doing now is completely different. So I started off as an optometrist. So I was working in practice. And if anybody doesn't know what that is, it's examining eyes. Um, and I really didn't love it. So I really what I was really good at was getting people in the room and they were very open and tell me stories and tell me things that they wouldn't normally share with people. And I realized that this is a real skill and I want to use it for something that's more beneficial, not only for me, but for people. And how can I serve and how can I help people more by doing what I love rather than something that I don't like and I'm not passionate about. So I decided to discover that more. And there was a lot of things that happened in my life, in my personal life, and my journey during this time. So I had my son, I got divorced, I moved to Edinburgh. All of this happened within the space of a year. And in that time, I thought to myself, this is my opportunity to now start doing what I love. So I started training in leadership development, leadership coaching, did NLP, hypnosis. So yeah, all the things that I never thought I'd be able to do, I started doing when I moved to Edinburgh. So that was a real life-changing moment. It was also a moment where I'd hit rock bottom and I knew I needed to get out of that. I needed to use that pain that I had to start my life again. And not just for me, but for my son as well. And when you've got a little human, for those of you who have got children, they become your priority. So it wasn't really about me anymore. It was how do I support this little human being and create the best version of myself to help others. And also, I think people underestimate what coaching actually is. And you'll know this from all the guests that you've had on here. It is really about your mindset. It's about the way your brain operates. Some people operate in a different way. Everybody makes decisions differently. Everybody argues differently. Everybody deals with conflict differently. And so, I went through several stages in my life thinking, there's got to be a better way. There's got to be ways that I can help others, but also overcome what I've been through. So I went through a journey myself of personal development, counseling, therapy, all the things that would get me to the person that who I am now. I don't know how many iterations I've been through, but I'm definitely not the person I was 10, 20 years ago. So this then takes me to the journey of helping leaders and how they limit themselves internally. So there's things like imposter syndrome you've heard of. That's one of them. Limiting beliefs, burnout that comes out of the stress of doing too much, not having those boundaries, and always being a people pleaser. I mean, most people are like that. So I'm having conversations with executives, with leaders who are struggling with these things. And at the same time, I'm helping them on a deeper level because I'm doing hypnosis and working with a subconscious mind. And then I continue the journey. And then I did the Institute of Leadership and Management Coaching and Mentoring. I continued that, loved it, continued, did the executive coaching, continued that, started working with teams, realizing that actually the biggest problem here is people don't want to have difficult conversations.
Brutal.
They don't. It's hard to run the business, but then at the same time, it's also hard to sit someone down, deliver bad news, or have that difficult conversation with somebody. And I found that this is a skill that's really required in every single business. It doesn't matter what industry, it's every business. And during this journey, I've won a few awards. You can see them in my background: mentoring, Tech Women Awards. And what I do with Net Women is I'm helping women, elevating them to the top through leadership training and development, negotiation skills, helping them being promoted. And I realized that it's not just women, it's men as well. So it's how do we have these conversations? So I went and did a postgraduate at the University of Strathclyde in Glasgow. And I did that in conflict resolution and mediation. The interesting thing about these two things is that people think that they're mediating, but they're really not mediating. I ask the question to HR or managers or leadership teams, and I say, so have you attempted to have a conversation and mediate for this particular case? Because it may be going to a grievance, potentially a tribunal. We don't want that to happen. Have you done the first steps of actually sitting down with these people that are struggling, having difficult conversations, but not so everything's under the carpet. Everything's brushed on the carpet. Nobody wants to talk about it. There's a huge elephant in the room. And they go, oh, yeah, yeah, we sat down and had a conversation in the room. And I'm like, no, no, no. I'm talking about mediation. And it's about really the problem isn't the problem. It's what's underneath that problem.
Mm-hmm.
So here I am.
I love it. I absolutely love it. And the amount of times when we're working with people and clients, the problem's never the problem, is it? That when they come and sit down and go, this is what I work on, I'm like, right, thank you for that. Right, we need to look over here. The problem's never the problem. It's what we believe that the problem is. So this must happen. I remember it was like, so I always go back to the corporate times that we had with at Royal Caribbean. And I remember there was two times I was involved in something that went quite high up. Um, and they always handled it really well, to be fair. To be fair, they were absolutely excellent. But I also know it doesn't happen a lot. And I see a lot of businesses that say we've got an in-house HR, which is the accounts manager that's done a HR training course and is covering them doing both. What's the actual underlying cost for having that one team member that nobody can speak to, and that energy that they bring, let's say the drains, not the waterfalls, what's the actual cost of allowing that to keep happening?
So I've done a little bit of research for when I send out my proposals to people, and they always ask me this question, what is the actual drain? On average, per employee, it's costing about £1,000 per year. So if you add that up and you add up the number of employees you've got, that can really be hurting your business.
That's amazing that you've actually done the research on it as well. So, because I would think, to be fair, I thought it might be higher, because if you've got that one employee who is the one that's stubborn and the for whatever reason, and there's always a reason, behind the behavior, whatever that reason is, we look behind that. But then what about the rest of the employees that watch on and go, well, if they're allowed to act like that, I can surely act like that as well.
Yeah. And this is the other stat that I have. So some of the stats are around ROI and how that's hurting the business, but also so if we look at ACAS, which is where everyone goes, the financial impact for employees involved in conflict is £3,000 per year per person. And if they were going through a formal process, that is exactly it. It's just over £1,000 per employee lost through productivity, through their absence, through the resignations, through formal processes. And it's an estimated £28.5 billion for UK employers every single year. So it's so hard to measure some of these, but this is ACAS that have done the work around it, and it's a huge amount.
Absolutely. That dog started barking. He just give me a second. Sorry. So that is a lot of money. That is 28.5 billion pounds per year with all the workplace employees when they are disgruntled. And that's a lot of money. So conflict resolution, we now see the value of it. We genuinely see the value of it. Now, what's it for anybody watching this, HR managers? I always try and get HR managers to watch it and things like that. If there's a possibility for a quick three-step process, what's the three-step process that Pinky works through to get yourself into to the frame to be able to do it, and the three-step process to start that conflict resolution?
Good question. So there's three core things that I would say to do is, first of all, you need to tolerate the discomfort. And what I mean by that is actually staying in that conversation that is very uncomfortable long enough to actually reach some kind of clarity, not just relief and not just saying, oh, right, okay, yeah, you said what you've had to say, now that's it. I'm talking about you have to get uncomfortable about this discomfort that you're feeling. So get comfortable about being uncomfortable, first of all, and listen. Like, listening is a skill that you cannot, I mean, I feel I'm a good listener. I think what makes a really good listener is someone that doesn't necessarily respond immediately as soon as someone said something, because you're then not listening, you're just hearing them.
You're waiting to respond.
Exactly. So you're reacting rather than being proactive about your listening.
Mm-hmm.
That's number one. And then number two is being curious. Curious over certainty, right? So you're not certain about this. You don't know what's going on. So why not ask the questions? Ask, what am I missing? Instead of, how do I solve this? How do I fix this problem? Because most leaders are fixers. You know, the majority of leaders I speak to, they're like, I just want to fix the problem. I'm just, I'm here to fix any problems that occur. I want to sort them out. Of course you do. Of course you do, but you're dealing with humans, and humans may
They're
not.
not broken.
Yeah,
I always say that. They're not broken.
they're not broken.
They don't need fixing.
No, they don't. Absolutely right. And that goes back to my point about listening, because if you're actually listening and not trying to solve a problem, you're not coming up with a solution. So ask the questions, get interested about what they're saying. Like, actually show some empathy and compassion by asking questions that are relevant, and don't try and run away from it, because when you run away from it, this is when problems escalate. You start getting quiet quitters, you start getting people that are sending these emails that sound, well, the tone changes, right?
You're not supposed. I always try to. It's funny you say that, because I used to read, and for anybody watching this, if you're reading an email, the one tip I used to have is don't read it with the emotion that you're feeling. Or if you know you're in a bad mood and you think in that moment the whole world's against me or the manager's trying to fire me, don't read the email. Let that emotion pass. Go back to the email the morning after when you feel nice and refreshed, and read it without emotion, because you will actually get more from the email or the text message than. And for anyone listening to this, especially to what Pinky said as well, is, we often are just listening to respond, and that's again, I think I've mentioned this in a few podcasts. That's ego. It's fear. So we as human beings, we do want to be right. Our brain wants to be right, so it can move on to the next thing. And complete to what Pinky says, if we go into a conflict, into a meeting where we have to have that uncomfortable conversation, if our emotions are on tenterhooks, guess what? That's going to come out. And it's a practice. And I know you'll be trained in it, Pinky. It's an absolute practice to be able to go, this is not personal. It's probably not about me. Because I say that with a lot of the businesses that I work with. I'm like, generally, when you work with a mind management coach, a lot of the HR managers will say, look, can we find out what's going on? I'm like, to be fair, it's never really a work problem. It's something at home they've brought to work. And because they're paid and think they're allowed to get away with certain stuff, they'll bring that stuff and that will be their projection. And the amount of times I've worked with staff and employees, we find out it's not the manager that's the problem. It's something else that happened. And once we resolve that, they go back to work a week later going, oh, I'm so sorry. Thank you. Thank you so much for everything you've tried doing for us. And it does really, really help. And taking the emotion out, which is not easy because people don't understand their emotions, do they, Pinky?
No, they do not. But I think
Mm,
what to your point there, I think people, so my success rate with working with people when I've done a mediation is 90%
mm.
or and the reason for that is because when I go into these situations, I always make people feel heard, seen, and respected. And if you can do that with somebody and you can make them feel like that, then you're already over 75% of the way there. And then after that, that's when all of the other things that I've said come about. And the final thing I would do out of the three is, when we get upset, we tend to go, you do this. And then, it's always a you thing,
The
right?
blame, the finger point.
Exactly. So instead of attacking a character, we can try to name the impact. So it's kind of like when this happens. So when this situation, the problem's a problem, right? It's not the person, it's the problem. So when this X happens, the impact on me is X rather than you always blah, blah, blah.
Mm.
That will make a huge difference on the way communication happens. And I've seen it happen before. It's always like that blame game of you always do this. And we'll see it in our own relationships with our partners, in couples. You see it all the time, You get angry about something, you always leave the washing out or whatever. And yeah, it just blows up, right?
It is, and that's for anyone watching this, just to deep dive that a little bit more. That is everything I'm always talking about is our emotions always act first. And it's the monkey mind, it's the amygdala part of the brain, which is the quickest to react. And we have to bypass that with 1,001 techniques, which is breathing, counting to three, acknowledging whatever term you want to use, is we've got to bypass the amygdala, which is the attack, the launch. And that it's there for a reason, it's there to keep us safe when we sense threat. It's what sets off the fight or flight response within ourselves, which is a genius, beautiful thing. Unfortunately, we allow something that kept us safe from dinosaurs years ago to still react when your sister, your manager, the director says something that we would be like, but so it's the biology and the chemistry we have within ourselves that is there for a reason that we're misusing the reasons now. So when you're talk when you're having a chat with the manager and the manager's coming at you, I had to learn this, and I'll use this for me and my wife. And it was I've talked about this book plenty of times. I know for a fact you'll have read it, but it is The Chimp Paradox by Stephen Peters,
Yeah, great book.
and it's a great book. Great book. I read it and I was like, this is changing my life. And then I started doing my bad habits started coming. I'm like, I'm gonna have to read the book again. So I went back and read the book again about 2 years later. And the one part I always remember, which is probably the reason me and my wife have lasted so long, is I remember the section in the book that when a heated couple are in an argument, It's the monkey mind or the emotion that is speaking in that moment, not real facts. We're not speaking from love in that place. We're speaking from anger, resentment, judgment, jealousy. And we have to be able to learn how to let that pass when someone's roaring at me. And Pinky, I know you've not met me, but I'm 6'2" and 4 feet wide. So I tower over quite a lot of people. I'm big. I'm a big boy. I really probably shouldn't say big boy because I'm nearly 50. So I'm a big guy. Um, so I used to be a doorman. I used to be a nightclub doorman, and I do remember that I was probably one of the only doormen way back then that were like, "Why don't you ever react?" I'm like, "I'm not really pissed off with me. They've had too much drink, and it's probably something else going on." Like, and that was 30 odd years ago. But I had to learn and train myself to not engage with somebody else's emotions, which I think is a powerful technique you can learn. And it's probably bode really well with me and my wife. And I mentioned she's going through the menopause. She doesn't watch the podcast. She has no idea what I'm talking about in the podcast. So I'm allowed to share that information without any backlash from the wife, to be fair. But it's that, and I had to learn it. I was atrocious for not understanding my emotions. Just atrocious. Snappy, aggressive, emotional, weepy. And it's a fine tuning of understanding, or that I'm on. It's the emotional speaking. So I'll share something, Pig, and you'll be able to jump on this and we'll deep dive it. Is one of the best, because you mentioned it, and I was like, this is exactly what I do with businesses. And I've got a leadership conference coming up in Manchester in June. And they went, Cuddy, we need you to come down for this, and this. And I'm like, I can do that. I went, however, I've got a really cool 1 hour training on how to listen. And then she was like, what? I went, yeah, listen. What for? I went, because it will save your business and your staff and employees coming up thousands, because people don't know how to listen. She went, that's actually really a good point. I went, no, I can guarantee you now, there's not many people training you on how to listen. No paraphrasing, no nodding your head like a tilted dog. I said, no, it's done. It's finished. We're not doing that anymore. We're going to be able to watch people's body language from sitting and going, and you will know the exact emotional state somebody's in, and you don't even have to speak. They went, you can do that. I went, I can do that in 45 minutes. I said, I promise you. They went, oh my God, that is genius. I said, it is. And I do it all the time, and I'm sure you do as well. I call it SLAP, story, language, awareness, and physicality. If you know what to listen to and the body language that's coming out, you'll know what emotional state they're in. So you can deactivate that with your coaching style or your managerial style. Oh, we want that. Cuddy, we want that. She goes, I'll even sign up for that myself. I'm like, I can tell it's like pulling the matrix down. You just see everybody's emotional states from their language and physicality. So I find that really, really powerful. And it's not that hard a skill to learn, is it, Pinky?
I think it's hard for some people. And I
Yeah.
think it's because there's people out there that don't know how to do it. So when it's absolutely new to you and you don't know what it is, it takes, just like anything, a bit like going to the gym or working out or losing weight or whatever your goal is a part of a muscle in your brain, which is exactly what you need to work on every single day. It's consistency that matters. And if you do that, you'll see the results. And if you don't do that, then you won't get the same results as someone who is actually consistent with their efforts. I think listening is a learned skill, and it's like confidence. It's like any skill, but it is like building a muscle. So absolutely, workshops are wonderful. It's just that, are you going to practice that? What are your goals to practice that on a continual basis? And then once you've got that, you can carry on, and then you will do it subconsciously rather than consciously, which is what you have to train your brain to do first before it goes into the subconscious. Like when you drive a car, you're not really thinking about it, you get in and you go for it. And that's exactly where you need to be able to get that mind mastery, if you like.
It is. It's the mind and emotional mastery. And I think it's one of those underutilized skills that I've said this in many podcasts is if we can work on emotional mastery and call it less mental health and let's call it emotional health, you might find a massive change with any work structure, which I think we're talking about the positives now, but with any podcast, we have to talk about, you said you were 90% successful, which is a fantastic rate. What have you seen? Because we're going to go down a scenario. I'm going to give you a scenario, and you go, "This is exactly what you do," because that's how we can give so much value in the podcast. But we're not there yet. So the question I have for you is, I've forgotten what the question was, Pinky. To be fair, I know where I was going for a second. My dog just came and sat on my lap, so I'm like, right, hang on a second. So the question I have for you is. Let's talk about the bit you didn't, because we always focus on our successes, which is brilliant. What happened in the 10%? What was actually going on for the 10% that you didn't get the resolve?
I think with the 10%, there's always something else going on beyond the actual conflict. And people are people, as I always say. Human nature is human nature. They may have already come in. Say, for instance, when I work with someone, I'll meet them for the first time, maybe a couple of days before we do the mediation. And I'll meet individually and I'll ask questions around what's happened and really do a deep dive into their situation. I'll do a little bit of coaching after that to make sure that they're happy to have the conversation with the other party in the room. When we go through the motions of that, sometimes, and I would say 1 in 10, will completely do a flip. Like I'm talking a 180 and just go, no, not interested. I'm going to take this further.
Yeah.
And that happens because they've always had something in their mind. Maybe they've got enough evidence. Maybe they've got enough proof. Maybe they feel that they've been hard done by. It's gone too far. So all I'm saying at this point to the organization or the company that I'm working with is please get in touch sooner. Please talk to me before it gets to this point where people are desperate and they're like, we cannot cope with working. Because once you get that notice handed to you saying, I'm leaving, it's too late. We can't do anything. So it's the bit before that where they come to you with an email or they come and talk to you in your office and they go, I've got this issue, and they're talking to you. Stop trying to solve it. Get somebody in that can help you because external, and I truly believe this, right? You might be the best leader in the world, the best HR leader in the world, and you're really shit hot at your job and you're really good. And I've heard this so many times where companies approach me and they say, I've said it 1,000 times, they're not listening. And the people that are involved are getting really annoyed. Can you come in? Because as an external person, you don't know the politics of the company. You don't know the actual ins and outs, what's going on, the cultural changes that are happening. And I think it will come across better if you come in and do it and you come and talk to them because they're not listening to me. And for me, that's an advantage of being outside an organization because you see it in a different perspective and you can remain neutral, you can remain unbiased,
There's no
you
taking sides.
yeah, impartial. You're that person that can come in and not take sides because that's exactly it. HR do their job, they protect the company at the end of the day, and they're not protecting the employee per se. So you know that they're going to be taking sides because they're protecting themselves. So I think it's really important to get that person that's impartial in. I don't know if
Right.
that answers your question.
No, it does because this now we're coming in with the actually juicy part of the podcast, which is exactly what I told you about before we started. So let's create a scenario that's not happened. The scenario is You have one employee and one manager gone through progressive performance counseling. The employee is just on the line, not above, not beyond, doing what they're supposed to be doing. However, we've got a situation where the manager doesn't feel comfortable talking because they know there's going to be an explosion. Coaching and counseling and therapy with the employee assistance program has been given as an option. How do you manage? Pinky's going to get called to come in. Pinky's the one that can handle the hard conversations, but you're doing a conflict resolution between the manager so the manager feels comfortable to come to work and be able to talk to the employee. All the information's been done that there's no bias on either side. Actually, the manager's done a great job. The employee still having emotional outbursts, but is I've possibly openly said it's just becoming continuously, confrontational. Now, Pinky flies in. She's flown in on a chopper.
Yeah.
Pinky is flown in for the chopper. What does Pinky do to get those two people in the room to walk away going, thank you, Pinky? This has been resolved.
I think first of all, I have to say that these situations are not uncommon.
No, they're not. Yeah.
I mean, I hear it all the time. So I think the first thing I would do is take both sides of the story. So I would definitely have these initial conversations with each party and see what's what for each one. I'd also be speaking to the leadership team because I need leadership buy-in. I need to know exactly what's been going on from their point of view. So it's really figuring out those stories. The next step would be, once we've done that, we're looking at a risk assessment as well, just making sure that, we're doing everything to the letter, the book, whatever you want to call it, making sure that there's the correct protocol. We're following that protocol. And I think one of the most practical things that I do is really figuring out what are the triggers, where is that come from, what team wise, and where did it all come from? Where does this start? And where are we feeling the tension right now between the people, the teams, or the goals? And then the second thing is, where is the avoidance? Where's the elephant in the room? What are we avoiding talking about? So those things are all discussed in the first instance when we initially start working together. And then looking at them meeting again and then getting buy-in from everybody involved to make sure that they're happy to be in the room. And it's usually the two parties and myself and no one else, so that it's kept confidential, it's impartial, and the conversation, is flowing. And the idea is I don't want anyone to go out of this room or walk out of this room in frustration, in anger, in all of those emotions that cause a mediation to fall. And that takes real skill. To facilitate something like that takes massive amount of skill. And then we talk, and if necessary, we'll go out into breakout rooms and we will talk in those breakout rooms and make sure that each person is feeling fully understood, heard, and listened to, and seen and respected, and making sure that this conversation moves forward, and asking questions, being curious, finding out what was the actual trigger, and helping the other person understand. And helping the other person see that person's perspective in their shoes.
Yeah,
So, it's like you're almost going back to the original thing, but it's helping that person see, oh, I see, that's your perspective. Okay, I get it. That's why. And it's usually a values misalignment,
it is.
where,
Often it is a values misalignment. Yes.
yeah, where, people don't get on because, one person believes this is a priority and the other person believes that this is something else is a priority. So I think it's really, for me, it feels very natural and simple. And then working through my playbook, working through my blueprint, making sure that that's all goes through um, in the way that it should, and then coming up with an action plan going forward. Like at the end of that, I don't want this happening again. My sole purpose is to come into an organization, help them solve it, but then help them see that in the future, if this happens again, here are the things that I can do. Here are a list of tools that I can use if this happens. Um, and sometimes, yes, I have to go in once a month or whatever it is to have conversations with people, and that's fine because it might be something else and they need the help and support from me to help them overcome these issues. Um, but yeah, it's a fun thing to be doing for me, but
Mm,
probably not so fun for the organization or the company that I'm working for. But I
yeah.
feel the action plan is really important because it gives them something to go away with, and then they can use it in the future.
Is there a possibility they can become besties 2 weeks later?
I haven't seen that happen yet, but
Cool. I know, I know, and I remember one of the things I just learned something, and I'm sure you'll know it. And this is just a scattering of it. And I had a fantastic chat with somebody who used to work at the NHS and did HR, and she went, "Cuddy, you need to look into." We were having a coffee. It was a lady friend that I had. That sounds wrong. It's a friend who's a lady who I go cold water dipping with. She has retired and she travels the world. And she told me a fascinating story once. And we just came to this conversation. I was like, do you like playing games? She was like, oh my God. She goes, I love playing games like Mahjong and all these things. I went, oh my God, I'm obsessed with board games. Do you ever want to fancy going for a coffee and we'll play Stratego? And we just went down. I don't even know where she is in the world at the moment. I think last day she was in Australia. We went down and we just chatted about what she did because I ask questions because I love to find out about people. And she just came up with this. She goes, "Could you need to look into the phoenix, the donkey, and the sheep?" And if you know this, by all means, share the story. She went, "It's about finding value in everybody who works for you." She goes, and I'm not a fan of labels. She goes, it's not labeling, it's finding the value in the phoenixes who will rise and rise and rise, finding the value in the donkey who's stubborn and kick back and does not want to do any work, but finding the value and then finding the value of the sheep who just follows anything anyway. And I was like, that is a really powerful thing because the amount of times I've had to go into businesses just for the phoenix, the donkey, and the sheep. And because the amount of times you walk away from a business and everyone starts seeing the value in the stubborn, I'm not changing, this doesn't need to happen. Because you look beyond that and go, well, actually, what do they bring to the table? Well, actually, it's experience this, this, and this. Now you've changed the perspective of the behavior. And I found that are you I'm guessing you are aware of it, and that was me just like scathing over it a little bit. But is there more you could talk about that from Pinky?
I don't know those particular ones, but I do know that when you do certain personality analysis,
Yeah.
I'm not going to mention any of them yet
Is
because
it
I know,
disc?
yes,
Everybody talks about disc, and I've done a couple of podcasts on. I'm
yeah,
not taking away from what disc is, but I think it's a little bit shite.
yeah.
That's
So,
not taking away from anyone that's doing disc. That's not that. But I remember going through disc. I was tits and teeth, so I know I was.
yeah, I know. I've done a few of them in my work and through my life, and it changes all the time. And what it does that's good, it identifies. similar people and it identifies people that aren't similar and how you can work well together and how you need to improve to work with so and so. I think what's not great about it is the fact that it's boxing people. So it's putting people in boxes, which actually every human has got all of those things in little quantities. You might be a bit more of something
Yeah.
and a little of everything else.
Yeah.
So, and actually, I don't think it's that accurate, to be honest.
Do you know, have you ever met Danny Wareham?
No.
Right, you should connect with Danny Wareham because Danny Wareham was on the podcast and he was like, "Do you know that disc? Oh no, it was Higgs and boson or whatever it's called. The personality things. Do you notice this? Could he actually go back to the personality tests, which was EFNG or whatever they were? There were so many different things.
Oh,
It took
yeah.
me about 4 hours to fill the questionnaire. Cuddy, it was based on astrology star signs. I'm like, you are kidding me. He was like, no, that's exactly why that is a stupid system to follow. It wasn't this. So you're absolutely right about the disc thing because I remember the disc was look, you've got these traits, and the part of disc was if you want to work with this person, you want to do this. But it always felt for me that everyone was like, no, I'm a, whatever the driver is, the authoritarian. They used to say, no, I'm a driver, I'm authoritarian, I'm going to carry on. I
Yeah.
don't need to see what you need to do.
Yeah.
Because right? That's exactly what it was like. It was like, no, I'm authoritarian, I'm a driver. I can carry on being an arsehole and screaming and shouting because
Yeah.
that's what it says on my chart.
Yeah, and it's I mean it's all very similar. There's one that's like the engine, the generator, and the motor or the steering wheel or something. Well, and you're just like, okay, you're all the same. You're all trying to box people. It doesn't help.
However, the one thing I do agree with, because I always say tits and teeth, because I was I'll go out 5 miles ahead, sing and dance, but I'm actually not details orientated. So when somebody comes along with details, I could fall asleep in a meeting.
Mm.
I'm like, are you just not going to move at all? We'll not see that. The analyzers, it was the analyzers. I was like, oh.
But
It was absolutely, I was like, oh God, I'd rather fail and learn quicker. Fail fast and learn quicker for me, which is
yeah.
not always the best. I know that. I know that. It's not.
No, fail fast is good because then you get up again and do it again.
Yes, I've got a lot of scars. I've got a lot of scuffs on my knees, let me tell you. True story. So, look, I actually thought this conversation was fascinating. Now, let's, and this is an overgeneralization, but what do businesses do with the the drains, the real drains? Let's be honest, you must have met them. You must have met them.
Yeah.
I hate saying the victim mindset because I don't think people understand what the victim, unless you understand victim mindset and growth mindset, or fear mindset and growth mindset. It's a harsh word. I used to be a victim. I was in the victim mindset for I didn't realize that's where my depression was. However, for those overgeneralization, it's a label in a box, and I appreciate that. What do how does Pinky handle them?
Um, it's not my place, first of all,
Love
because
it.
when you're in a situation, um, and you've got two, let's say two people, give or take, might be three involved, and you've been told to solve or help with mediating. As somebody who's supposed to be neutral and unbiased and goes in and helps them bridge the gap between whatever's going on between them, the conflict that happens, it's not it's not on me to make that decision
Hmm.
as to whether or not that person stays or goes or what happens to them. My job is to make sure that I'm bridging the gap, making sure that they're communicating again as they should be, and helping to handle that difficult conversation. So it's over to the company to go, okay, this is great. But then, in terms of HR, I do not get involved in any of that because that's not me. That's not my bag, thankfully.
Do you know there's a lot there's there's a lot of truth in that is I can help people in corporate America, but would I want to go back to it? Because we always bring a bias. We do. We always bring a bias. And that neutrality is, do you know, I think the biggest successes I've had, and it was an NLP leadership book, and I remember it. It was the one position, second position, third position. I actually genuinely found it fascinating. The amount of times I used it and got results with the positions where everybody had to see everyone's position, and the amount of times that they would walk away and go, "Oh, thank you so much for that." And half the time, and I've talked about it in a previous podcast. It was the stage and production manager and the dancers, and I just said, I need you to listen to not what they're saying, what their fear is. Because if you listen to what they're saying, you're going to be pissed off. We're going to go back behind that. What's the fear? And they would tell each other what the fears were. The second they said that, they were like, "Oh yeah, that makes total sense. So we can we do this instead?" Yeah, absolutely. And they walked away after half an hour of talking. And they were all like, "Thank you for doing that." And I sat there and I was like, barely even talked. We just
Yeah.
had to set that little parameter in. It is fascinating. Conflict resolution. I am excellent at conflict resolution as long as it's not about me. Because if it's about me or I feel like I've done something wrong, I get involved.
Yeah.
I that self-awareness, I'm being totally honest.
It's
So
so
How how is London treating you? We're going to start wrapping up, but after leaving Edinburgh, which I think is an absolute massive loss because we could have had a coffee because that wouldn't have been too far away.
yeah.
How's London treating you?
I mean, it's all right. I
It's
miss
not Edinburgh,
Edinburgh.
is it?
I do miss Edinburgh. Um, and who knows? I mean, I'm always visiting, so if I'm up there next time, we can definitely meet up for a coffee.
Absolutely. How is did you say your son?
Yes.
How's your son enjoying London?
He's loving it, of course. He's studying, so he's loving life.
Fantastic.
What can I say?
And if there was one bit of knowledge that you would like to impart to the world, what's the one thing somebody could change today that would make a difference tomorrow that Pinky had to do when you weren't in that place of where you are now?
Oh, I have a few. I'll give you one. I think looking back at where you've mentioned this, the victim mindset, and a lot of people have that victim mindset. And it's being able to change that thinking of, you know, why. Instead of saying, why is this happening to me? Ask yourself another question. Ask yourself, what is this bringing to me? What is this doing for me? How is this helping me? And think about it in a different way and reframe that thinking and try that and see if that helps.
Ask better questions, you'll get better answers.
Yep.
Not why is this happening to me? What do I need to do to stop this happening to me?
Yep.
And on that bombshell, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, Pinky. I know you thought I'd ghosted you the first time, but I didn't. I just get a lot of emails coming in. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, Pinky. I think that the value of the podcast is we build relationships. I know we've never met, but I want people to be in the ecosystem of the mind management mentors, that somebody's seen it and thought, do you know what? Pinky is the one for me. I need to go and speak to Pinky. So I need all your details. I'll put them on the podcast description for you. Thank you so much for being on the Mind Management Mentors podcast. However we met, whether it was your team or yourself or me messaging you, thank you. I am forever grateful for this experience. It's been a joy and an absolute pleasure. And I've learned some things as well, which is what I'll be using on my sales moving forward.
It's a
Pinky,
pleasure. Thank you.
what it's all about. You've been absolutely amazing. Thank you very much. If you've enjoyed the podcast, like and subscribe, share and comment. and tell your friends about us. And if you want to be a guest on the podcast, you actually only have to do is email me or find me on LinkedIn. And we'll try and get you booked in if you want to talk about workplace wellness, leadership, mindset or mental health, or how you've grown your coaching business. That is what we're here for. Big love from Cuddy, and we'll see you on the next episode of If It's in the Mind, It Can Be Managed, the Mind Management Mentors podcast.